Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing changes that were announced to the weapon and Wyrmprint system at Reset yesterday. These changes are slated to be ushered in as part of version 2.0 of Dragalia Lost that will be released after a long 12-hour maintenance tomorrow. At the end of that maintenance, there's also going to be a Dragalia Digest, so I expect at least a little nod to a lot of these changes coming as part of this version update, if not a more detailed explanation of them. But thankfully, we did get a teaser with lots of info about how the weapons and Wyrmprint system will work. It is a complete overhaul, and this version update looks like one of the most massive version updates we've ever had in the game. It does look like a genuine refresh for Dragalia. So I wanted to take the time to go through the info we have so far, knowing that we will probably know more after a couple of days have passed. So I have the weapon info notice here, and then we'll look at the one for Wyrmprints. I am up a little early today. I had a feeling this might come out, so I set my alarm clock a little early. I figured before work I could get in a recording session and have my coffee here. So this is our early morning weapon and Wyrmprint overview. It's my first time seeing a lot of this, so I hope that you forgive any slow reading or any mistakes or anything like that, but I'm going to try my best to be diligent and read through it, but know that this is still a brand new thing and it's going to take all of us a while to get used to. There is a notice here about something they corrected on this post, and I am aware of what that is, but I'm going to save that for the end of the video because I know some players that could be spoiler territory for something that might happen in the digest, and that's why they removed it, so I'll talk about that toward the end. So let's get into some of the weapon changes. The first thing they mention is this goodwill gesture. We already knew about that. Basically, what that does is says that if you're affected by some of these changes and it means that you're losing out on something that you had, you're going to get compensated for it. So one of the big changes is that weapons and Wyrmprints, from now on, you only have one copy of them in your inventory. You either have it or you don't have it. But for players who had crafted multiple, the goodwill gesture basically is going to give them materials back that they spent to craft, or things like Damascus ingots that they spent to unbind. So that's pretty much what that is all about. We kind of knew about that, but we get some more details about some specifics on that, including related to augments. They say the next update will reduce the number of weapons that players have to manage and make the process of crafting weapons easier to understand. Alright, so here we go, we can get into it now. In version 1.2.3.1 and earlier, players chose a weapon to craft from the various groups available, unbound it fully, then enhanced it. In the next update and beyond, the craft and enhance tabs will be removed and replaced by a weapons/crafting tab from which players will select and craft a weapon from various groups. A new feature called the weapon bonus will be added that can be unlocked by upgrading your collection of weapons. In the next update and beyond, abilities, including those attached to individual weapons in version 1.23.1 and earlier, will be consolidated into generalized weapon abilities whose effects apply to all weapons of a particular type once they are unlocked. Other changes include the ability to equip Wyrmprints to your weapons. Alright, so we kind of have a materia system, or a system similar to a lot of RPGs. Xenoblade also comes to mind, where you have slots on your equipment, and the Wyrmprints are kind of like accessory cards that let you customize it. So in this case, we're going to have slots on our weapons, and we're going to be able to equip Wyrmprints to them. The way you use and upgrade weapons is changing. The following is a list of the main changes. Before we get into that, I want to acknowledge what they said here about generalized weapon abilities. This is something that in our predictions video, the one I did with Straight Lace, we had kind of hoped for or talked about. I mean, we talked about the idea, and Straight Lace mentioned it, of customizable weapons, being able to slot in your preferred abilities into a shell of a weapon. This kind of starts to fulfill that, right? It feels like you're slotting in the Wyrmprints at least, and for the abilities, they made it generalized, which I think is a big improvement as well, just because a lot of those void weapons have highly niche, highly specialized abilities, but they have a lot weaker stats. And so it feels kind of bad to have a weapon in your collection that's really only good against one fight, and have to constantly switch to that or manage that or know when to use that. Now, if you just have that somewhere, or if you crafted it ever, it's going to apply to similar class of weapons in your collection. So I think it's basically the same element and same weapon type, but we'll see a graphic in a little bit that kind of gives detail on that. So now let's talk about the way you use and upgrade weapons. Here's a list of the main changes. So in the previous version of the game, weapon stats, HP and strength were upgraded by leveling it up. In the next update, this will be accomplished by unlocking nodes. In the previous version, unbinding was performed using copies of a weapon. In the next update, this will be accomplished by unlocking nodes with materials. Only one of any particular weapon can be crafted, but by unlocking additional copies of the weapon, it can be equipped on multiple members of a team. Slots will be added to weapons, and up to 5 Wyrmprints can be equipped to each weapon. Note, Wyrmprints will be changed to typically have only one ability per Wyrmprint. Alright, so a little bit of a rain cloud on our excitement there, but it's still more on net if you think about it, because we used to have 2 Wyrmprint slots on our characters, and that usually meant 4 abilities. Now we're probably going to have 5 abilities. The weapon bonus will grant an increasing benefit to the HP and strength provided by certain types of weapons as players craft and upgrade more of them. Certain weapon abilities, such as the Bane abilities found in the weapons from Void Battles and Advanced Dragon Trials, will apply to all weapons of a certain type once unlocked. Each change will be explained in further detail below. Alright, let's go ahead and read below, since it's easier to process some of this when you have the visuals that they provide. Let's start with crafting weapons. Crafting groups. 1 weapon of each type from each of the following groups can be crafted. Core weapons, 3-star non-elemental weapon, 4-star non-elemental weapon, 5-star non-elemental weapon, 5-star weapon of each element, flame, water, wind, light, shadow, 8 total. Void weapons, 5-star weapon of each element, 5 total. Chimera Tech, 5-star weapon of each element, 5 total. High Dragon, same thing, 5-star of each element, 5 total. And Agito, 6-star weapon of each element, 5 total. Interestingly, what that means is void weapons have been drastically simplified. I think if you look at this, right? Because, well, actually, or is it just the wording that's kind of funny? So with the core weapons, you have the 3-star non-elemental, 4-star non-elemental, 5-star non-elemental, which count for 3 of these totals, and then the 5-star of each element, which is 8. So it's essentially 8 per weapon type. And this is 5 per weapon type with the void weapons, which makes me think, it's a total of 40. So any weapon that was a void weapon below 4-star or below 5-star rarity is going to be gone. It's only going to be the High Dragon Bane void weapons, presumably. And then the Chimera Tech weapons and the High Dragon Agito weapons look the same, except, well, actually with the High Dragon weapons and Agito weapons, the tiers are not really mentioned. I guess that's true of the Chimera Tech as well. So right now there are technically 10 for High Dragon and Chimera Tech, and for Agito, some elements have the second tier available. So let's see what they say. Notes: each weapon can only be crafted once, but a weapon can be upgraded, as described later in this notification, to increase the number of them that team members can wield. In the next update, certain existing weapons will be removed and can no longer be crafted. Okay, so they're acknowledging they're actually removing weapons from the weapon pool, which honestly, a lot of them are kind of, they just aren't that important or useful, so they kind of take up space and confuse people. But they do say weapon skins of certain existing weapons that are removed in the next update can be obtained by upgrading weapons from each group. That's nice. It means if you wanted them cosmetically, you're going to have access to some of those void weapons. That's at least what I take this to mean, since void seems to be the one where there's the biggest reduction in the number of weapons. And if you look at the picture here, they even make it seem as though, core is based on Imperial Onslaught, the void weapons, they show Zephyr and a Zephyr-based weapon specifically. So I think that those are the weapons they would keep. I don't think they would just randomly choose to keep, well, I don't know actually, because then I'm thinking about it, the Void Manticore weapons previously were a prerequisite to the Chimera Tech. So let's read on and see if that will be the case or not anymore. But the cool thing you can see on some of these graphics A little small, a little hard to see, but there's a node icon here in the corner of this weapon now. And I guess this is the material cost for crafting. It's actually a little different from what I can tell. Like currently when you want to craft this weapon, you need tier 2 badges, like the bigger badges from the IO, the golden level tier, not the silver level that's shown there. And you need a lot of meteorite as well, which is the golden tier of that first material. So that's kind of different. Maybe those will be, maybe it's cheaper to craft, but to power it up and unlock all the various nodes and functionality, ultimately you pay around the same price. That could also be possible. So let's read about weapon unlock progression. Craftable weapons will be unlocked in the following order: 3-star non-elemental, 4-star non-elemental, 5-star non-elemental core, 5-star weapon of each element from each group. Okay. The requirements for unlocking weapons from each group are as follows. For core weapons, for a 3-star, you need no smithy or other requirements. For a 4-star, you need a fully upgraded 3-star non-elemental and a smithy of at least 4. For a 5-star, you need a smithy of at least 5 and a fully upgraded 4-star. And then for a 5-star elemental, you need a smithy level of 6. I guess when they say 5-star weapon of each element, that means core weapon. For void weapons, you need a smithy level of 7 and a fully upgraded of the non-elemental stage. Chimera Tech, smithy level of 8 and a fully upgraded of the non-elemental stage. High Dragon weapons, fully upgraded non-elemental core, a void weapon of matching type and element, and smithy level 7+. And then Agito, fully upgraded non-elemental core, Chimera Tech of the matching type and element, and smithy level 8+. Honestly, it's still kind of confusing, not gonna lie. I think one thing that's not super clear here is, do you need these weapons? Are they an ingredient in the crafting, or are they just a prerequisite? And I think they're a prerequisite, because if you can only have one of each weapon, it makes a little less sense for you to lose the weapon when you get the better one, since then it would just mean you have to recraft it, but you can't upgrade it further because you already have one of the advanced copy. So I don't think you're going to use weapons as inputs for crafting anymore like you used to. You used to, for example, expend the tier 1 Chimera Tech weapon when you made the tier 2 Chimera Tech weapon. It was part of the input process. So I guess it's a little strange. So for High Dragon weapons, that one seems to have changed because it takes a non-elemental core and a void weapon that matches the element of the High Dragon weapon. Previously, you needed an elemental core and a void weapon that matched the type. So now it needs a non-elemental one. And for void weapons, I don't know that the void weapons had this requirement of a 5-star non-elemental core weapon. I don't think they did. I think you could just craft them whenever you wanted. They might have had a smithy requirement, but I don't think you needed to have a core weapon to craft a void weapon previously, so that also has changed, it appears. And for the Agito weapon, it looks the same, although now that they say Chimera Tech weapon, right now, currently, for the Agito weapons, in the, prior to this new update, you need a tier 2 Chimera Tech specifically. This wording that you just need any Chimera Tech makes me feel like they are actually getting rid of those tiers. And actually, if you notice, you don't see any numerical tier on here. So I feel like tiers are gone. Because normally on these little weapon icons, there's a Roman numeral with a 1, a 2, or a 3. So yeah, this leads me to think that tiers are actually gone, and it's basically just one of each of these types of weapons, which honestly, that's kind of a good thing. That would make it seem as though the way this was described, with the 5 total for the Chimera Tech weapons, one of each element, and 8 weapon types. Anyway, I guess that would make it seem like, there's no tiers. Huh. Okay, that is a great simplification, I would say. Let's continue on. A fully upgraded weapon is one that has had its stat and functionality upgrade nodes fully unlocked as described later on in this notification. Other weapons, the following weapons may be equipped and upgraded if the player possesses them. Soldier's Brand, Lucky Hanatsuki Paddle, Mega Sword, Mega Blade, all the way to Mega Staff. The following weapons may only be equipped and will not be displayed under the other heading: Battle-Worn Sword, Battle-Worn Blade, all the way to Battle-Worn Staff. So these are kind of like your 1-star wooden weapons. And I'm not sure what Soldier's Brand is, honestly, but Lucky Hanatsuki Paddle I know was a paid exclusive, and the rest of these mega weapons were from the Mega Man event. Frankly, like, these could just have been skins, but they give you the ability to use the Mega Buster, so that's probably why they have to have them in their own category. Same thing with the Lucky Hanatsuki Paddle, it gives you the ability, it has a special skill, it's kind of like a distant ball, energy ball attack, which at the time for swords, there wasn't really a sword weapon skill that looks like that. It doesn't have any particularly remarkable stats, same with the mega weapons. So these seem like they could have been skins, but I guess they want to accommodate that functionality once existed. But the fact that these exist at all kind of changes the nature of the weapon collection, sounds like. Like, they had to make exceptions for these. What is Soldier's Brand? I'm not sure what Soldier's Brand is. That doesn't sound too familiar to me, but the weapon names can blur together, so if I have it, I'll take a look, but I'm a little doubtful that I have it or would even be able to find it in my collection easily. Or maybe I do have it and it's just something I'm forgetting. Well, let's keep reading though. Interesting that they say that they don't include like the Halloween weapons here, or some of the Dragon Yule weapons. Like, there were some special weapons for events. The New Year's ones make sense. There were some New Year's weapons, but those didn't have any special effects. They were just pure stats, so it kind of makes sense that they would just become skins. But then, like the Halloween one, there was a light staff that has an emergency heal skill that was unique to that. So it's kind of interesting that it's not there. As for upgrading weapons, improving weapon stats, in the next update and beyond, a weapon's stats will be upgraded by spending whetstones to unlock HP and strength nodes. Unbinding and refining a weapon, as described below, will be necessary to upgrade these stats to their maximum values. Unbinding weapons. Unlock a weapon's unbinding nodes to increase the maximum number of times that its HP and strength nodes can be unlocked. In the previous versions of the game, unbinding was performed using copies of a weapon. In the next update and beyond, unbinding them will be performed by spending materials instead. Steel bricks, Damascus ingots, and adamantite ingots may continue to be used to unbind weapons. Weapons with a weapon skill can be unbound to a certain stage to level up that weapon skill. In addition, certain weapons will unlock weapon skins when unbound. So that's kind of cool that along the way, as part of the nodes you're completing, you're getting some of those weapon skins that might have otherwise be forgotten. But this is a really interesting change. I mean, the biggest question mark is, what's the cost behind these nodes, right? If I have a fully upgraded weapon right now in the current world of Dragalia Lost, that's like, a 6-star max unbound, level 200, am I automatically gonna get it like changed in the new version to where it's already maxed out fully because I had it maxed out beforehand? Or am I just gonna get it and whatever materials are required, I have to see if the materials I get back from the goodwill gesture are enough to power it up? Like, that's kind of a question I have is, how much is the material cost 1-to-1? Because if upgrading the nodes to unlock the HP and strength nodes, upgrading the unbinding nodes, or unlocking them to upgrade the HP and strength nodes also costs whetstones, which is what it costs to level up weapons right now, then it doesn't really seem like it's changed much, except that you can only have one weapon in your inventory, and kind of like the way you navigate it has changed, but the functionality hasn't actually changed too much. I don't know, that's going to be a question, is like, what are the real costs to this? Refining weapons, unlock a weapon's refinement nodes, okay, so there's even more types of nodes, to increase the maximum number of times the weapon can be unbound. Refining weapon requires materials, and weapon skills and abilities may change after refinement. Interesting. I mean, that's interesting. So you can see here on this page, for stats, there's HP and Strength, which has 70 upgrades, Unbinding, which has 8 upgrades, and then one called Refinement, which gets cut off, that was just referred to, which would let's see, increases the maximum number of times the weapon can be unbound. So refining increases the amount of times you can unbind, which increases the amount of times you can raise HP and strength. It feels a little bit convoluted to me, but I'm used to the old system, so that's probably why. And then the second page has weapon abilities and slots. So there's 6, I don't know why I said 3. There's 6 images, but it says upgrades 0 of 9. And for slots, this one says 0 of 1. And apparently this person has the materials to upgrade the slots, but not the materials to upgrade the abilities. Also, Inferno Apogee, we know of this weapon. It used to be High Midgard Stormer's Bane Flame Void Sword. It looks like it still has the skill prep ability based on the little icon that's there. Let's read about augmenting weapons. In the next update, weapons may no longer be upgraded with augments. Fortifying jewels, the specialized items that increase the HP provided by a weapon in version 1.23.1 and earlier, will be removed. Well, we only had 10 of them anyway, so I guess they're not going to do weapon augments after all. Note, because weapons may no longer be improved with augments, we will not be adding amplifying jewels, the specialized items that increase the strength provided by a weapon previously announced for a future update. So they're just not going to do augments for weapons. That's fine with me. I mean, if they haven't done them yet, it didn't really make a difference to me like in the past, so I guess this is not going to be the avenue they pursue as far as power increases. Weapon functionality, copies of weapons. In previous versions, multiple copies of the same weapon could be obtained. In the next update and beyond, only one of each weapon may be obtained. By unlocking a weapon's copies, team members may equip up to 4 of the same weapon. Notes, weapon storage will be removed. Certain weapons must be unbound to a certain level before their copies can be unlocked. If a player obtains a weapon that they already have, it will be converted into materials or other items. Alright, so this looks interesting. Now we actually get to see the copies icon on here. And this it appears it's been scrolled down, because weapon abilities is on top and then slots was underneath. So this says slots, weapon bonus, and copies, but this isn't Inferno Apogee anymore. This is Levitain, because you can see the might total is higher, it's 330, so this is a different weapon. But the slots, 0 of 1, weapon bonus 0 of 1, which we haven't really discussed the bonus, copies 1 of 4 upgrades. Interesting that there would be 4 upgrades, right? Because presumably if you have the weapon, you can already equip it to one character. And then you would need to upgrade it 3 times because there are 4 adventurers on a team, unless there are going to be 5 adventurers on a team, which I doubt. Maybe it just starts off at 1 of 4 by default, because then on the next page you can see for upgrades it shows 1 of 3. But it looks expensive. These costs right here are pretty expensive. It's almost like crafting a new copy of the weapon from what it looks like, or maybe even more expensive, because Levitain isn't that costly of a weapon to craft. It's a 5-star core weapon. This looks like it's more expensive than just crafting a regular Levitain. Especially these Crimson Core, that's a lot of Crimson Core. So these are all development images that could change, but it might be that having multiple copies was easier in the old system. Perhaps it's going to become expensive, but it's something pretty rare. Like, not a lot of players, unless you're really hardcore, for endgame weapons, grinded out multiple copies. There are classes that make that desirable, like wands in the light element is a good example, because Peony is a character who has a different co-ability, and she's a light wand to somebody like Radiant Xuansong or Lucretia. So it kind of makes sense why you might want to have multiple, because they actually are 2 characters you would want to have on the same team. Same thing with characters like, let's say, Ronzel and Valentine's Melody, or Ramona and Halloween Mim. Like, these specialized co-abilities make it so that sometimes you do want 2 copies of the same weapon, and we'll see what the costs are like. I mean, I would hope it's a little bit cheaper than the first copy, or like than crafting the weapon itself, because it feels like if you've already gone out of your way to craft the weapon, why not make it a little bit more accessible? And also, if you want to max out these weapons, and get all the nodes, doesn't it seem like you're going to need to have the nodes for copies fully unlocked as well? I don't know, that's just how it appears to me. Okay, so now we have weapon slots, weapon bonuses, weapon abilities, and other changes. We still have a ways to go, y'all. So weapon slots, each weapon will come with a certain number of slots. In the previous versions of the game, up to 2 Wyrmprints could be equipped to an adventure. In the next update and beyond, Wyrmprints will be equipped to weapons instead and can be equipped in a number equal to the number of slots in the weapon. The number of slots that a weapon has will vary from weapon to weapon, and slots can be added to a weapon until it has 5, allowing it to equip up to 5 Wyrmprints. Slots come in 2 types. Slots for 5-star Wyrmprints, up to 3 per weapon. Slots for 2, 3, and 4-star Wyrmprints, up to 2 per weapon. So they're kind of giving us a use for lower rarity Wyrmprints, which is nice. Those have kind of fallen out of favor as we've gotten an expanded pool of 5-star Wyrmprints. 5 stars just tend to be able to cover a lot of what you would want to cover already. And the way the slots look is also slightly different. So the 4-star to the 2 to 4-star ones look like a little blue icon. Actually a pretty cheap cost to unlock. Who knows what the cost will be on the 5-star ones, but they are this golden or yellow icon instead. Weapon bonuses. By unlocking the weapon bonus for elemental weapons from each group, players can boost their adventurer stats depending on the type of weapon that they wield. These boosts are reflected on the castle information screen. Weapon bonuses for certain Agito weapons will be added in the future. Alright, so this is kind of like the functionality of a weapon dojo from what I can tell. So just by having unlocked these weapons and having them in your collection, it's going to boost stats of adventurers that have that weapon type. That's kind of nice. Yeah, that's a surprise for sure, but that's all it seems to be. It doesn't seem like anything related to, having sets or collections of weapons. It just looks like if you have the weapon, you're getting a boost to stats universally by having it in your collection, which is kind of an incentive to collect the various weapons. Weapon abilities. In previous versions of the game, individual weapons came with a variety of abilities that provided advantages in void battles, astral raids, and advanced dragon trials. In the next update and beyond, these same individual abilities can be made available as generalized weapon abilities by upgrading certain weapons. The weapon abilities that are available to a particular weapon will depend on the weapon's type, and these abilities will take effect regardless of what weapon an adventurer has equipped, as long as the adventurer's weapon type and element match that of the new weapon ability. Therefore, you will no longer need to equip a specific weapon with an ability tailored for a particular enemy in order to benefit from it, as long as you have previously unlocked that weapon ability for the weapon type you are using. Certain weapons will unlock weapon skins when their weapon abilities are unlocked. The list of weapon abilities that you have unlocked can be viewed in-game. Alright, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I was hoping for when we read about this earlier. Basically, these are these specialized abilities that help you in astral raids or help you against void bosses or help you in high dragon trials. Now, it might make things a lot easier, especially for high dragon trials, to have high dragon's bane on, let's say, your Agito weapons or your high dragon weapons or even your chimera tech, which already have really high stats. So this will definitely make some of that content easier, but I think it's about time for the high dragon trials. I mean, those are starting to fade a little bit as more people get into Agito. They were still hard enough where players would just skip them, like players would go straight from Chimera Tech to Agito and not do the High Dragon Trials. I think with this type of change, we're starting to reach a point where High Dragon Trials can be tackled more similarly to regular Dragon Trials. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they changed the bonus from High Dragon Trials from a weekly bonus to a daily bonus, because although I'm done with the High Dragon Trials, I have all the weapons and have, all my facilities, all the dragons. There are a lot of players when you're coming into the game, like it's going to take you a long time to catch up on a weekly basis, but if they make it dailies or something like that, in addition to this change, which should make them easier, it's going to give players an opportunity to catch up, and I like that about this. Alright, other changes. So we're finally at the end here for the weapons. Weapon-related endeavors, so they're going to have to change certain endeavors. They'll either be removed or their details will be revised or new endeavors will be added. That makes sense because the whole system is different. And that applies to normal endeavors, campaign unlock endeavors, the Royal Regimen, and event compendium endeavors. Otherwise, they mention things about the campaign. So the tutorial describing how to upgrade weapons that unlocks after players clear 5.3 in Chapter 2 of the main campaign will be replaced with one describing weapons crafting that unlocks after clearing 6.2 in Chapter 2 of the main campaign. Weapon storage slots received as rewards from chests found in the main campaign maps will be replaced by dragon storage slots and augment items. Alright, they might not mean dragon augment items, but I kind of hope they do because we still don't really have any of those. And yeah, that's pretty much it for weapons. So it seems like a much more linear path. That being said, each individual weapon seems to have a lot more care and attention to it because there's this whole node system that you're going to have to kind of monitor. I mean, the materials might be cheap enough that you can kind of blaze through some of the earlier or weaker weapons, but yeah, like the Void Zephyr weapon, Inferno Apogee, is a good example. Like, I think that what this basically shows, it says there's a total of 9 upgrades for weapon abilities with 6 icons, so maybe more will be added as you unbind it. But I think basically what this will do is this weapon has domain over like all of the previous Void Flame Sword effects that you might have or abilities you might have. So previously you might have needed a Flame Dull Res sword that was separate. What I think it'll work, the way I think it'll work now is when you unlock these nodes, one of them will give you Flame Dull Res. One of them will give you, Flame Fury Penetrator. One of them will give you Flame whatever the effects are that you might need for Flame. And then they'll appear on this screen here. So you can see they're actually element attuned on here. You can see the little element in the corner. So like there's some that are for wind, light, flame, dragon delay res is right here for flame swords. So basically I think that all the ones that are for a flame sword will come from the same void weapon, in this case Inferno Apogee. All the ones that are from a light sword will come from the same light void weapon, and so on, to where you don't have to have all these separate weapons, but as part of powering up your one void weapon, it's going to give you power against all the void battles. I do think it's still kind of funny that Chimera are listed separately though, because they're in the void battles area of the game. So like they are a type of void battle, but yet they're listed separately. That's always been kind of funny to me. But otherwise, I think this is cool. The biggest change to me is the lack of a tier system. What's that going to mean for Agito weapons, which were at tier 2 previously? Is that, are we just going to get like extra materials that, your tier 1 Agito weapons, in order to unbind fully an Agito weapon, there are certain nodes that you need the Master Difficulty Agito Trial materials to unlock. For example, like let's say I have what's now a tier 1 Flame Sword Agito. Maybe I hit a limit at some point where I can no longer unlock further nodes until I beat Master Volk's Wrath. I get a special item from that called Rebellious One's Insanity, which is only dropped in Master Difficulty, or on weeklies for Expert Difficulty, I think. And then after I have that item, now my Agito weapon can be upgraded even further. Like that's one way they could do it. I could see that being plausible. So that way, instead of having separate tiers, which can be kind of confusing, it's basically you reach a point in the tree for the weapon or in the mana nodes for the weapon that you can't progress further without having the right material that you need. All right, and I have to remind myself, we'll come back to this little notice here in a bit. But let's talk about the changes to the Wyrmprint system. This shouldn't go as long as the weapon, since these are kind of supplementary to the weapon system. But they say they're going to change the following: Wyrmprint functionality, Wyrmprint upgrades, Wyrmprints available in IO, and the treasure trade for Wyrmprints, Wyrmprint related endeavors. So functionality is the big one, and we kind of got into this with the weapon change, but in previous versions of the game, each Wyrmprint tended to have 2 abilities, and some with event perks had 3. In the next update and beyond, each Wyrmprint will typically have 1, not including Wyrmprints with event perks, which may have 2. After these changes are implemented, the abilities of existing Wyrmprints may be different than they were before. In addition, Wyrmprints of the same rarity but different names may have the same abilities. Alright, so it looks like a reduction overall, but it's basically because you're losing that second ability, so that's the main reason it appears that way. But remember, instead of equipping 2 prints, you're going to be able to equip 5 Wyrmprints on some of your weapons. That being said, going from 2 to 5 is more costly, so if you're a newer player, it's going to take some time to build out your collection, but I like that there's a greater customization aspect to this. With 5, you can interchange a lot more pieces, you can do some interesting things. Character like Incognito Nefaria, who I feel is lacking, she's lacking one of 2 things. Either A, inspiration in the flame element, or B, having more Wyrmprint slots, because her kit has a lot going on. She wants some critical rate, she wants some skill damage, she wants various different things, which it's hard to get via 2 prints. This actually kind of opens some doors for characters like that where their builds kind of pull them in a lot of different directions at once. So I think that this is pretty cool. I'm excited to see how this pans out. Number that can be equipped. Number and rarity of Wyrmprints that can be equipped on a particular weapon depends on the number of slots that weapon has. Each weapon may equip up to 3 5-star Wyrmprints and up to 2 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star prints. What I am hoping here, and I think this is my assumption, but hopefully this is true, I want to make sure that you're not locking in your Wyrmprints, right? In some video games, when you use your Wyrmprints, when you use your gear slots and you put something in it, it's locked to that gear permanently, or you can pay a cost to remove it. I don't think it's going to be like that based on how it's been described, but yeah, if it's completely mix and match, that's pretty sweet. And you can see here some little icons. So we'll get into those in a second, but let's read about copies. In version 1.23.1 and earlier, multiple copies of the same Wyrmprint could be obtained and equipped on different members of a team. In the next update and beyond, additional copies to equip to members of a team can be unlocked by upgrading an individual Wyrmprint. Fair enough, similar to weapons. Up to 4 copies of a Wyrmprint may be unlocked by spending Eld Water, excluding certain Wyrmprints. Interesting. That might be special Wyrmprints though, that are given as gifts, so player EXP Wyrmprints or something, or anniversary print. A Wyrmprint cannot be equipped on more than one member of a team unless one or more of its copies are unlocked. If a player obtains a Wyrmprint they already have, it will be converted into Eld Water and rubies. In addition, Wyrmprint storage will be removed. Alright, this might literally be one-to-one with our current costs. So right now, if I have 4 copies of an existing print, they might just give me the exact Eld Water I need to unlock all the copies on the one print I'll have in the next version. I wouldn't be surprised if it is one-to-one. Or maybe it'll even be cheaper, but if it's more expensive, that would be a little disappointing. Affinity bonuses. Certain Wyrmprints will have an affinity. There are 11 affinities in total, and equipping multiple Wyrmprints with the same affinity will activate an affinity bonus, providing various ability effects. Ability effects provided by affinity bonuses will stack with ability effects provided by Wyrmprints, but do not share limits. For example, if 4 Wyrmprints with the Crown's Boon affinity are equipped, the skill damage plus 10% ability effect will activate. Alright, wow. Yeah, we haven't had anything like this before. So, Crown's Boon, I guess, let's see if we can see which Wyrmprint that was on. I think that might have been on Valiant Crown. Is that the same icon? It looks like the same icon. So apparently you need to have 4 with Crown's Boon and you get a bonus. This is one of those systems that's going to be clearer when we have a visual of it or we're able to look at it in game. But this could be a lot to take in. 11 different affinities. Basically at its core, this sounds to me like set bonuses, like using associated Wyrmprints or Wyrmprints that kind of have a stylistic connection of some type, or maybe a functional connection in some cases, gives you a special bonus. So it's kind of like when you, in some RPGs, equip the same set of armor, like a matching set of armor, you get an additional bonus on top of the stats for that set of armor. I think that this is going to work in the same way. And you can view details on the number of affinities required to activate an affinity bonus and the effects that affinity bonus provides. by checking all affinity bonuses section of the Wyrmprint selection screen accessible when editing teams in game. Alright, this is going to be something that I check the wiki for, because I feel like they're going to be really on top of this, and it's going to be very easy and awesome to navigate. Wyrmprint upgrades, HP and Strength. In the previous version of the game, Wyrmprint stats were upgraded by leveling it up. In the next update and beyond, the HP and Strength stats will be upgraded by unlocking HP and Strength nodes. Unbinding a Wyrmprint will be necessary to upgrade these stats to their maximum values. Alright, similar to how weapons are going to work. Unbinding Wyrmprints. Unlock Wyrmprint's unbinding nodes to increase the maximum number of times its HP and Strength nodes can be unlocked. Alright, again, similar to how weapons are going to work. In the previous version of the game, unbinding was performed using copies. Since now you can only have one copy of each print, unbinding them is done using Eldwater, which again makes sense, and hopefully it's around the same cost or cheaper. Wyrmprint's ability effect will be upgraded based on the number of times it has been unbound. The Vestige Refined effect that alters a Wyrmprint's art will continue to unlock at the second stage of unbinding, and silver keys and golden keys may continue to be used to unbind Wyrmprints. Nice. Augmenting prints. In the previous versions of the game, the HP and Strength stats of a Wyrmprint could be augmented up to 100 each. In the next update and beyond, these stats may be augmented up to 50 each. Augment items used in the earlier version of the game will be returned to affected players when goodwill gestures for these changes are provided. Alright, I was waiting to see that. I'm glad to see that. It means you don't have to mess around with moving your augments just because they are on duplicate prints. And also, you don't need to mess around with, going down to plus 50 instead of plus 100, because they're going to give you back the excess. This honestly makes it so I might have enough augments to enough augments to augment my entire collection of Wyrmprints. Yeah, because it's only half that you need now, and you only have one copy of a print, even if you want to use duplicates of it. So it's going to become easier to get a maxed out Wyrmprint collection as far as augments go. And you can see here the little icons, so, the upgrade, the unbinding, copies. It's so weird to not see a level, though, at all. Like, there's just no level on here. It's only this little indicator node. Huh. That is very different. Kind of sleuthing around to see, anything new on this page, but I don't see anything. Wyrmprints available in the Imperial Onslaught Treasure Trade and Treasure Trade for Wyrmprints. Trades will be limited to a maximum of one of each Wyrmprint, and players who already have one of a Wyrmprint will not be able to trade for it. Unlike the Wyrmprints mentioned earlier, unbinding and unlocking copies of the following prints will require materials other than Eldwater. So these are the special Great Wyrmprints and High Dragon prints. Players must have fully unbound to the Great Worm Midgard Stormer print in order to trade for the Glorious Tempest print. The same holds true for Great Worm Mercury and Queen of the Blue Seas, etc., etc. Wyrmprint-related endeavors are also going to be changed, similar to the weapon-related endeavors, so that they make sense in the new context. And as for other changes, well, they say the same thing about the tutorial. That's going to be removed. Oh, the 2 Wyrmprint tutorial makes sense, because now you can equip up to 5. Tutorial content will be revised. The Mana Fountain Wyrmprint will be replaced by the Old Heart Wyrmprint as a drop reward for quests in Chapter 1 of the main campaign. Alright, very specific. Wyrmprint storage slots received as certain main campaign clear rewards will be replaced by Dragon Storage and Augment items. Same deal there. Alright, we've gotten through everything. It's going to be very different. It's going to take some time to adjust to all of this, but overall I'm excited. I think the weapon changes are going to be smoother and easier for players to navigate. Just looking at a cleaner screen as far as the weapons is going to help a lot. I know it sounds kind of confusing right now. It's going to take a little while to adjust to this, but I do think that in the long run, having a smaller overall amount of weapons and treating the excess as skins is going to be beneficial, because navigating all the void weapon pages and the tiers and whatnot, it's a lot. So I do like this change. I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a benefit to the game, since it'll help retain and keep engaged newer players who find the system to be kind of confusing. And for Wyrmprints, it's anybody's guess. I mean, not having 2 abilities, at some level it feels a little bit less customizable, but the fact that you can have 5, you could probably mix and match in some pretty cool ways. So I'm excited to see how this pans out as well. The cost of everything is something I'm really curious about. Is it pretty much a translation of how things currently cost into a new system, like roughly the same amount of materials, same amount of Eldwater? And that goes to weapons as well, as far as the materials. Or are the costs going to change a lot to where we're actually having to rebuild large parts of our collection? I guess we're going to find out very soon. We'll know tomorrow. And the last thing I'll mention for this video is, what was this issue on this notice? So, apparently, and I wasn't awake when this happened, but I've seen some screenshots from it. Apparently, there is a new weapon type being introduced in the game. It's one of the things that Straight Lace predicted in our predictions video. I was a little skeptical, but I answered him when he mentioned gauntlets. I answered him as saying, maybe it could be like a brawler or magical gunner, but I can't really think of any other types of weapons that would make sense or that they could really do. Well, as it turns out, there is a new weapon type coming that was seen on some of these screenshots and then removed, and it is a mana caster weapon type that looks to be a magical gunner. The way we know it's called mana caster is one of these notices next to the Mega Buster notice mentioned a battle-worn mana caster right here. So after staff, it said battle-worn mana caster when this was first posted. So it means, I guess, DL is going to have characters wielding magical guns. I can already imagine Pipple having a magical weapon, of course, of this type. Characters like Joe actually would really make a lot of sense with this. And it also makes you wonder, is our Gala character for the anniversary going to have this brand new weapon type, and that'll be a big selling point, or maybe even our welfare character from the anniversary raid that's coming up? They could probably reclass Mega Man into this weapon type too, since that would make a lot of sense. But yeah, no clue about that at all. Like, are they going to build out Agito weapons for it? Is it a really limited weapon type that only very few characters have? Who knows, but the fact that they're changing the weapon system so much, this is probably the time to do a change like this, if they wanted to do a change like this, since we're going to get refunded materials, we're going to get a lot of things back. It gives us something new to craft, like if you're working the Agito and now you have a new weapon to craft as well. So I'm excited about it. I have no idea how it's going to pan out, but we'll find out shortly, I imagine. Anyway, y'all, that is going to do it for this video, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this look at changes coming to weapon and Wyrmprint systems in Dragalia Lost as part of version 2.0. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.